It's a personal story of loss, but it offers hope. Eau Claire native Jane Jonas has written a book called Upside Down, a book that chronicles her journey through grief after losing her husband, Rick, in a terrible accident. Rick was killed by a dump truck while running on Short Street in Eau Claire nearly 8 years ago. The book is available on Amazon.com, and we're happy to have Jane Jonas with us today. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate that. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about the background with the book, I guess, how it happened.
Well, I've always been a writer, and I was working on a novel when Rick died, and I could not get back to that novel. And in the meantime, I started writing letters to him, and I guess I'll call it a grief journal. I started the day that he died, and I wrote almost every day because he was the person I wanted to talk to, and obviously I couldn't do that, so I just wrote him letters on about how I felt. And I also wrote stories about things that we had done together, and he was a very funny man. We had a lot of fun together, and I didn't want to forget anything, so I just did that in order to get through my grief. And about 5 years after Rick died, I decided I was going to put it together just for me and our children. And as I was doing that, I realized that it was a book that maybe someone else could read if they had had a tragedy in their lives, and maybe it would help them.
Sure. And you were kind of adamant to say that this is not an advice book or a self-help book.
It's just my story. It's merely a story. This is a story of Rick and Jane Jonas, their life together, and how I survived his death, and what I did to get back into the world again, because I spent a lot of time alone and trying to figure out how to rebuild a life.
Sure. So describe the book a little bit, I guess, in terms of what's in it. The journals, just the way, or the writings, just the way they first wrote them?
It is, exactly. I didn't change anything, maybe some punctuation, but I kept everything exactly the way that I originally wrote it. This book starts out about Rick's death. That's not a journal, that's just the story of how it happened. And then through that, I put the grief letters in the book, and then I also talk about other things that had happened, other stories. So I intersperse the grief letters with stories. So it isn't sad. The book isn't sad the entire time. There are some very tragic moments in it, but there's also some funny things. And so I did that because I didn't want it to be sad, 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 and then, oh, here's a happy story. So I would put stories in. And that's actually the way that I thought during all those years. I thought about, this is really sad, I feel really bad today, but now I want to write a story about something we did that was fun and happy.
To remember, again, remembering the happy moments. Yeah, some people probably would say, well, I'm kind of scared to read it, or you know, it's going to be too sad. But you're saying, you know, that it's something that they can maybe get something from.
Right. And when you get about halfway through, you find where I decided to get back into the world again. So I talk about how I needed to learn how to be social, how to meet people again. And I've always been an extrovert, and I had become an introvert, and I needed to make myself get out there and do things and learn to meet people again. It was very difficult.
Sure.
But it's kind of funny. Some of the stuff is kind of funny in there about how I forced myself to do things. And then there's like the last part of it, I'm not going to say it's advice, but it really chronicles how I survived this.
And that's what you consider yourself, really?
Definitely.
As a survivor.
Yes, definitely a survivor.
Yeah. And did you want others to know, I mean, obviously writing the book and publishing it, you want others to know who Rick was too, and what kind of a person he was?
Yes, yes. And because he was a very smart entrepreneur. He started a business 30 years ago in Eau Claire with one truck and ended up having more than 100 employees. And but he was also very funny. He was very involved in his community. We actually ended up living in Rusk County, and he was on the county board there for 6 years.
So involved, yeah,
very
in the community.
Involved, yes.
And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the book and where people can get it, and we'll be back after this.
All right,
Stay with us.
thank you.